The volume of sales this past week in the full Portland metro real estate market, including Southwest Washington, is still below last year's rather meager numbers. However, interest rates did dip into the sixes. So let's take a look at how this affected our market stats and trends. The average sale price was up by 2% versus the previous week, but ended up pretty much on par with last year's number. It was down just 0.3% versus last year, and that's less than a $2,000 difference, and it's also coming off of 4 weeks of being in positive territory. So prices are still holding on despite decreased demand and a relatively low volume of sales. It's not great, but it's also not the 20% crash that some online sensationalists have been forecasting for like the last 18 months now. The number of purchase agreements signed by buyers and sellers was down by 15% versus the previous week. However, the number of lockbox opens, our best measure of serious buyer activity, that's buyers out with their agents looking at homes, it was off only by 1% from last year's number. So buyer interest is still there, but affordability problems seem to be keeping a fair number of buyers from making that jump. As a result, the volume of sales is down. In fact, it's down by 13% from last year's pretty meager number. On the other hand, interest rates have been sliding, so we'll see if or at what point our sliding interest rates have an effect on demand and subsequent volume. I have a feeling that if the 30-year fix does end up somewhere in the low 6% range or even the high 5% range, that it could ignite some interest in the market again and move some of those buyers who've been sitting off the sidelines back into action. The supply of homes available for buyers to purchase moved down just a smidge, as the number of homes that hit the for sale market for the first time dropped off by 7%, and that's off of the previous week's decline of 8%. For the homes that closed this last week, sellers only had to come off their original asking price by just 4%. That's a pretty big improvement over the previous week's discount of 7.5%. We did see some movement in interest rates after the relatively positive inflation news that we received earlier on this week. We did see a big decrease in the yield on the 10-year Treasury, which of course is one of our best indicators of where mortgage rates are headed. And mortgage rates did dip into the high 6% range a couple of times. That's for the 30-year fixed best case scenario. I'm both hopeful and excited to see if rates will continue to recede and what that'll do to our real estate market. So be sure to join me right here next week for the latest trends and statistics. As always, I'd love it if you would like this video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Have a great weekend, and I will see you here next week.